Hi Year 5 and 6. So we're going to read the next part of our book above pay grade, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. Yesterday we started the chapter of the sorting hat, and Harry is now at Hogwarts and he's just been through the process of finding out which house he's in, and the sorting hat's put him into Gryffindor house, which he's really pleased about. We're going to read the second part of this chapter today, pages 93 to 97. If you have a look underneath, as usual, there are the slides with the questions on, and there's also a page with some vocabulary on that you might want to check out before you listen to this chapter so that you can know some of the words that are coming up and what they mean. Have a little look at the questions too and familiarise yourself. And when you've done that, press play on the video again and we'll get going. Okay, so Seamus has just asked about the ghost, the Slytherin ghost. How did he get covered in blood? And Nearly Headless Nick, who is the Gryffindor ghost, said, "I've never really asked." When everyone had eaten as much as they could, the remains of the food faded from the plates, leaving them sparkling clean as before. A moment later, the puddings appeared. Blocks of ice cream in every flavour you could think of. Apple pies, treacle tarts, chocolate eclairs and jam donuts, trifle strawberries, jelly, rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to a treacle tart, the talk turned to their families. "I'm half and half," said Seamus. "Me dad's a muggle. Mam didn't tell him that she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him." The others laughed. "What about you, Neville?" said Ron. "Well, my gran brought me up and she's a witch," said Neville. "But the family thought I was a muggle for ages. My great-uncle Algie kept trying to catch me off guard and force some magic out of me. He pushed me off the end of Blackpool Pier once. I nearly drowned, but nothing happened until I was 8. Great-uncle Algie came round for tea and he was hanging me out of an upstairs window by the ankles when my great-auntie Enid offered him a meringue and he accidentally let go of me. But I bounced all the way down the garden and into the road. They were all really pleased. Gran was crying, she was so happy. And you should have seen their faces when I got in here. They thought I might not be magic enough to come, you see. Great-uncle Algie was so pleased, he bought me my toad." On Harry's other side, Percy Weasley and Hermione were talking about lessons. "I do hope they start straight away. There's so much to learn. I'm particularly interested in transfiguration. You know, turning something into something else, of course. It's probably supposed to be very difficult. You'll be starting small, just matches into needles and that sort of thing." That's our first question today. It's a vocabulary/retrieval question. What does transfiguration mean? You could probably work it out using the prefix and the main word, or you can remember what Hermione just told us. So transfiguration means turning something into something else. Trans meaning across and figuration meaning changing from one figure to another. So cross-figuring, cross-changing something. So in here, Hermione gives the example of changing a matchstick into a needle. Harry, who was starting to feel warm and sleepy, looked up at the high table again. Hagrid was drinking deeply from his goblet. Professor McGonagall was talking to Professor Dumbledore. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to a teacher with greasy black hair, a hooked nose and sallow skin. It happened very suddenly. The hook-nosed teacher looked past Quirrell's turban straight into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across the scar on Harry's forehead. "Ouch!" Harry clapped a hand to his head. "What is it?" asked Percy. Nothing." The pain had gone as quickly as it had come. Harder to shake, though, was the feeling that Harry had got from the teacher's look. A feeling that that teacher did not like Harry at all. "Who's the teacher talking to Professor Quirrell?" he asked Percy. "Oh, you know Quirrell already, do you? No wonder he's looking so nervous. That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but he doesn't want to. Everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. He knows an awful lot about the dark arts, does Snape." Harry watched Snape for a while, but Snape didn't look at him again. At last the puddings too disappeared, and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. "Ahem! Just a few more words now that we are all fed and watered. I have a few start of term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest in the grounds is forbidden to all pupils, and a few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins. That's our next question. It's an inference question. Why did Dumbledore's eyes flash and twinkle towards the Weasley twins? So Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins because he knows that they have been going into the forest even though they know it's forbidden. And his eyes are twinkling because he's just letting them know that he's aware of that fact. And it's a bit of a mischievous kind of way of letting them know they shouldn't be doing it, but in a good-humoured way. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins. I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you all that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of term. Anyone interested in playing for their house teams should contact Madam Hooch. And finally, I must tell you that this year the third floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry laughed, but he was one of the few who did. He's not serious, he muttered to Percy. Must be, said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. It's odd, because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. The forest is full of dangerous beasts, everyone knows that. I do think he might have told us prefects at least. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing the school song, cried Dumbledore. Harry noticed that the other teachers' smiles had become fixed. Dumbledore gave his wand a little flick, as if he was trying to get a fly off the end of it, and a long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high above the tables and twisted itself snake-like into words. Everyone picked their favourite tune, said Dumbledore, and off we go. And the school bellowed. Hogwarts, Hogwarts, hoggy-warty Hogwarts, teach us something, please, whether we be old and bald or young with scabby knees. Our heads could do with filling with some interesting stuff, for now they're bare and full of air, dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us things worth knowing, bring back what we forgot. Just do your best, we'll do the rest, and learn until our brains all rot. Everybody finished the song at different times. At last, only the Weasley twins were still left singing along to a very slow funeral march. Dumbledore conducted their last few lines with his wand, and when they had finished, he was one of those who clapped loudest. Ah, music, he said, wiping his eyes. Ah, a magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off you trot. The Gryffindor first years followed Percy through the chattering crowds, out of the great hall and up the marble staircase. Harry's legs were like lead again, but only because he was so tired and full of food. He was too sleepy even to be surprised that the people in the portraits along the corridors whispered and pointed as they passed, or that twice Percy led them through doorways that were hidden behind sliding panels and hanging tapestries. They climbed more staircases, yawning and dragging their feet, and Harry was just wondering how much further they had to go when they came to a sudden halt. A bundle of walking sticks were floating in mid-air ahead of them, and as Percy took a step towards them, they started throwing themselves at him. Peeves, Percy whispered to the first year. A poltergeist. He raised his voice. Peeves, show yourself. A loud, rude sound, like the air being let out of a balloon, answered. Do you want me to go to the bloody Baron? There was a pop, and a little man with wicked dark eyes and a wide mouth appeared, floating cross-legged in the air, clutching the walking sticks. Ooh, he said with an evil cackle. Ickle firsties! What fun! He swooped suddenly at them, and they all ducked. Go away, Peeves, or the Baron will hear about this, and I mean it, barked Percy. Peeves stuck out his tongue and vanished, dropping the walking sticks on Neville's head. They heard him zooming away, rattling coats of armour as he passed. You want to watch out for Peeves, said Percy as they set off again. The bloody Baron's the only one who can control him. He won't even listen to us prefects. Ah, here we are." At the very end of the corridor hung a portrait of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. "Password?" she said. "Caput Draconis," said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it. Neville needed a bit of a leg up and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cosy round room full of squashy armchairs. So that's our last question for today. It's a retrieval question. How do the Gryffindor first years enter their common room? How did they get in? So they go to a portrait of a very fat lady wearing a pink silk dress, and they have to give a password, Caput Draconis. And when they give the password, the correct one, the portrait slides forward and reveals a hole in the wall that they can climb through into their common room. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory and the boys through another. At the top of a spiral staircase, they were obviously in one of 2 towers. They found their beds at last. 5 4-posters hung with deep red velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up. Too tired to talk much, they pulled on their pyjamas and fell into bed. "Great food, isn't it?" Ron muttered to Harry through the hangings. "Get off, Scabbers! He's chewing my sheets!" Harry was going to ask Ron if he'd had any of the treacle tart, but he fell asleep almost at once. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much, because he had a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but it tightened painfully. And then there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned into the hook-nosed teacher, Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a burst of green light, and Harry woke, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again, and when he woke up the next day, he didn't remember the dream at all. That's the end of that chapter. So the next chapter, Chapter 8, The Potions Master, will be read to you in the next session. I hope you're enjoying the book. Bye.